world reflect that, reflect beauty. And what I really appreciated growing up was that there wasn't a big focus on like your body or what you look like in Utqarvik or at home, Obviously there's these messages that we receive in media, like you guys were talking about, what beauty is, and like MTV and like, these aspirations of what beauty is. But there's also a level of disconnection from that, so that that, oh, that's TV, that's media, but there's also this life here in my town and in my village. And what I'm thankful most for, I think, is that there was not a big focus on what we looked like physically, outwardly. And it was mostly like my mom would just have a concern for your well-being, your health. And so I'm thankful for that. But can you guys speak a little bit more to where we receive these cues? Where do we learn what beauty is, where it comes from, and where do we receive our cues and messages about beauty?
I think it depends on which time. When I became a teenager and I was becoming more aware of myself, we were buying magazines from Denmark, and we were seeing like all the appetizers or things that we saw in the news, the televisions, that's where we indirectly got all these signals and norms put into our minds. Like who were your teachers? I was in a really Danish, like most of my teachers were Danish people, and their norms were, who got to hear, oh, you look great today, you look beautiful today. And it was definitely not the Inuit looking kids who were getting those. So we wanted to be like those who got like good compliments for their looking.
Yeah, it's I think it's who you're surrounded by, right? And it really depends whether you grow up in your own Inuit community or if you're around a lot of people from elsewhere. Through my teens, I traveled to the south of Canada for part of my high school. I went to a boarding school, and so I was going back and forth between Iqaluit and southern Ontario, and it was really twisting my head around sometimes, the different messages I would receive, at home. If you gain weight or lose weight, people just comment without any kind of criticism, like, oh, you got fat. And people just say, yeah, I did, It's just a statement of fact, and it's not like a criticism. People just notice your fluctuations in your body and your hair and your everything. And when I was growing up, that was not a criticism. And then when I went south to school and was among mostly white teenagers, but also some international students, it really spun my head around, and I realized there are different ways of thinking about beauty in your body, and everybody seemed to be thinking about trying to be as skinny as possible. Like there was no limit to how skinny you could be. The skinnier, the better. And that was really surprising to me. And, I did watch TV as a kid, but I think maybe not so much. So I didn't really realize how important that is in Southern culture. And then I would come home, and because I was very much an athlete as a kid, I was pretty skinny as a teenager. I was competing in all the sports I could. I loved playing sports, and so I was very fit and healthy, but also pretty skinny. And I'd come home, and my grandmother would look at me and go, "Oh, are you okay? Are you eating enough?" She'd be so concerned how skinny I was, and not out of my appearance, but whether or not I was healthy. And I'd have to reassure her, it's okay. It's just because I'm doing a lot of exercise and I'm eating lots and I'm okay. So going back and forth between the two worlds was really confusing. And I really found when I was south that I disagreed with the beauty standards. And I didn't quite understand why. I didn't know it was about race, that people looked at me a certain way because I looked different. But I just didn't like the feeling of trying to look like this tall, skinny, blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl that everyone seemed to want to be. And I kind of rebelled against it, actually. Like, I shaved off all my hair and dressed differently. And that, I guess that rebelling was just pushing back against beauty standards that didn't feel right for me. Even though I couldn't put the right words to it. That's the best way I knew how to express that I'm not ascribing to those rules.
I think that, as a young Inuit woman and going to college down south, it was a weird experience because back home, where I'm from, it's mostly Inuit people. So we're like the majority, right? And then when I went to school in Arizona and Florida, it's backwards. And there's just like so many, I'm in the minority all of a sudden. And I think with that came a lot of like exotification. I don't know if that's a word, but they knew that I was different and I knew I was different, but like it was extra, there was some level of like, oh, you're quote unquote Eskimo or something, and they would be like so fascinated and like I would be, what's the word? I think like tokenized or something, or, just very like, they just wanted to talk to me because I was Inuit, really. Have you guys ever experienced that kind of exotification or?
No. When we have been traveling, and it has mostly been to Denmark, because if you want to leave Greenland, you basically have to travel across the Atlantic Ocean to get to other countries or Iceland. But mostly also because I have a Danish father, so I have a lot of family, and my father had a lot of relations in Denmark. So we have been to Denmark a lot. When people, it's especially Danish people, when they get to know that we are from Greenland, then like the energy kind of drops. Like there's a lot of racism between Inuit from Greenland and Denmark. So my experience with Danish people in Denmark there have always been that drop of energy, or like there's some things that we just don't talk about. And if they say something, that would be, oh, are you an alcoholic too? Or are you drinking with those kind of people in specific places? So, but if you are outside Denmark, and we have been traveling a lot to other countries, and if they actually know where Greenland is, they tend to be really fascinated about that they have met people from Greenland, and that they have been meeting Eskimos. I don't like the term, but that's that's what is used. So we are really exotic in other countries than Denmark, and in Denmark we are just all sort of alcoholic people, or either on, if you look light for Inuk, then you look beautiful for being an Inuk. Like, you don't look Inuk. You look too smart to be an Inuk. Like all those things that comes your way if you're a mixed ethnicities.
Yeah, like backhanded comments.
Yeah.
What they call those, like, yeah, you're pretty for a native girl or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
And that is supposed to be a compliment, like that Inuit are ugly people. And I think that's so, it's such a shame that it's put like that they get to define what is beautiful and what is ugly. And since I start working with tattoos, and when I when I start to know about traditional Inuit tattoos, I always been really drawn to them, and I knew right away that I was gonna have my own someday. But like especially in the beginning, like we are in a really early state of revitalize or taking back our markings here in Greenland. We haven't been doing it for as long as they have been doing it in Nunavut and in Alaska. So, and because of the norms that is really colonized here, when we start taking back the tattoos here, like it's maybe 3.5 years ago, people have there was just a huge reactions, especially from white men. They would come up to me at the street and yell like ugly right up in my face. But I think what hurts the most was the backlash from our own people, like speaking with a white tongue, like criticizing us with norms that have been assimilated into their minds. I think that hurts the most, but luckily there have been happening so much here in Greenland the last 3 years. When I got my facial markings, we were only 3 women in whole Greenland, and now we are maybe 70, 80 people now. So it's ongoing growing number with people reclaiming their Inuit beauty standards and taking back their traditional markings. So I'm really grateful to participate in that part and helping people with that.
Yeah, it changes so quickly.
Yeah.
From a few tattooed people to hundreds around here too. It was before I got my tattoos, I'd get a lot of negative comments from people because they knew I was planning to get them because I was going on the local radio in a lot of different communities asking who might be willing to talk to me about tattoos, which elders might be willing to be interviewed for my film. And so there was a lot of chatter about the fact that I was doing this research, and I got a lot of nasty comments from people. Until I got my tattoos, until the film came out, and people could see the elders speaking about the tattoos with love and fond memories of their own grandmothers, and learning that they're not, evil and like pagan or whatever, they are tied to our spirituality, but in a good way. They're not like, I don't know what people imagined they meant, but when they got to be a little less of a mystery and people learned what they were, and they're about beauty and the strength of women and celebrating womanhood, that people were less harsh after that. And now it's just normal. We walk around a lot of communities now and it's normal again, at least in Iqaluit. And, I used to be so excited and surprised if I saw somebody with traditional tattoos, and I'd have to go talk to them and ask where they got them done and how they learned about them. One of the first people I ever met with tattoos was Yari Gingiko. What's her married name now? Her new